Welcome to the Daily Commercial Forum. I am your host, Sandy Moore. As parents, we know that it is important for our children to receive a great education. However, we also need to protect them and keep them out of harm's way. There have been many shootings in schools across the country, and today we will be talking about what is being done locally to keep our kids safe while they're at school. Our guests today from Lake County School Districts are John Schmidt, Administrative Coordinator of the Safe Schools Department, Reggie Young, Security Service Manager, and Rob McHugh, Principal at South Lake High School. Welcome, everyone.
Hi.
Let's start by talking about, and maybe John, you're the best person to answer this, what are the standard safety measures in the schools?
The standards that we go by follow the State of Florida Department of Education standards. And I'm going to turn this to Mr. Young because he is very familiar with those standards.
Well, what we follow is a statewide policy for strengthening domestic security in Florida schools. And that's one thing that we do. It goes over access control, homeland security training, what we do with equipment and those kinds of things. But some of the key things that we do, we make sure we have an overall plan, we have a visitor management system, and then we also make sure we give training to our employees.
Now, when you said access control, what do you mean by that?
Well, it's some things when it comes to signage, single point of entry, gating, fencing, those kinds of things.
So in each of the schools, and I have two kids, so I kind of understand a little, two kids that are in the school system, I should say. So I kind of understand a little bit about this, but if somebody maybe doesn't, you have gates around the school, and are they locked typically at the start of the day? Is that correct?
Yes, it's standard for that to be the case. That's the where we try to enforce our single point of entry. And that's how we corral people to go into the front office to make sure they follow the signage and those kinds of things. But Ms. McHugh could probably speak a little bit closer to what they actually do on campus to enforce that single point of entry.
And gates in particular happen to be a challenge with all the options that high school students have, dual enrollment, Florida virtual school. So we're really making creative schedules, and we have to have personnel to man those gates. So that becomes a challenge in trying to make sure that we have them secure when they're supposed to be secure, and that we have that single point of entry only available to guests.
Well, and when you know, and I hadn't even really thought about it from a high school standpoint, because I have elementary school kids who pretty much once they're there, they're there. So now in the high school, is it, are they not able to get to their cars throughout the day? Do they have to go only through the front office, or is that how it works?
Typically for the students who, once they get to campus, if they need to go back to their car, they have to have administrative approval. We really don't want students roaming around in the parking lot during the day.
Well, I mean, if they have to leave, I didn't know yet.
Now, certainly what we do is we create passes for them so that we know and can identify readily who is supposed to be leaving at what time, and those passes identify them and the time that they're supposed to be leaving.
Very good. Now, what types of screenings go on for even, for your employees? I mean, I know teachers have to have background screenings, but what about even just like the janitors that are in schools, or the lunch people, or just the staff that aren't necessarily, they're not necessarily really one-on-one with the kids?
Students are entitled to have the most secure and safe personnel at their school sites possible. All employees go through background screenings, fingerprinting. Mr. Young, what else do they add?
Well, some of the key parts, people go through a level 1 and level 2 background screening. What that is, it just depends on what that individual was doing, what they have applied for, and what they're actually doing in the district. And so that level 1 and level 2 screening, it goes to Florida Department of Law Enforcement, and it's reviewed against their database. But if there's any issues with employees, visitors, volunteers, contractors, it's reviewed through the background check committee. I sit on that committee, and several other individuals, and we review those backgrounds to make sure we're getting the right individuals in, and those ones that shouldn't be, that we keep them out.
Now, when we talk about visitors to the school, are we primarily talking about just like parents that may come in, or I mean, is there, if someone comes to the school that's not necessarily a parent, I mean, is there what protocol is there at each school to deal with that?
Each school has check-in procedures. Some of them are manual and some are electronic. We have a system that some use called School Check-In, and that way that information is scanned into that database, and it keeps track of who is on those campuses and then how long they're there and who they're visiting with at the time. But Rob could probably speak a little closer to what they do directly on their campus.
And we do utilize the school check-in process, and we have a camera attached. So when a person comes in and checks in with us on the computer, it takes a picture and prints them a badge that's actually bright yellow, so it's easily identified when an adult on campus who may not have a pass, a staff pass, is easily identified. And so those people would then be questioned if they don't have a yellow pass or a staff pass.
And it's always important to know that all vendors who come on our campus in the district are screened through the Jessica Lunsford Act. And so those, before a vendor can come on our school campuses, they have to be badged. And they go through quite a tight scrutiny to be able to walk on our school campuses. It's not just anybody can roll in off the street and gain access to our campus without someone at least knowing that they're there and that they've been screened.
Well, and I know, I mentioned that I have two children that are in the school system, and a lot of the things that you're talking about that's been happening for a long time. But was there any response, or was there any extra things done in response to the recent shootings on our school campuses? Any extra safety measures that were taken?
That's a really good question, and I'll tell you why. Because for a long time, we have had wonderful security measures in place in Lake County schools. In fact, we were awarded a Readiness for Emergency Management grant in 2009, which enabled us to update and actually expand our emergency response and crisis management plan for our entire school district. It enabled us to develop what we call Go Kits, which are specific directions for about 30 different incidents on the campus. A teacher would have one in each one of their classrooms, and they give specific directions and to specific situations. For instance, an active shooter, or
and it's a kit.
It's an actual kit that's in the classroom. Mr. Young, would you go a little farther on the Go Kits, because you actually developed those?
Thank you, Jeff. What that is a quick reference guide, and it covers 7 different categories of emergencies with 33 different events within those emergencies. Well, what happens is every school district employee on school campuses have one. Our teachers, our janitors, our cafeteria people, the secretary at the front desk, and then we have what's called school incident management teams for each of our sites. And those people have a copy with everybody's protocols listed on there for quick reference. And so we have a system in place where we have safe schools coordinators. They do the day-to-day management, but people like Mr. McHugh, they are the incident commander for any event that comes up. But we have a pretty expanded system, and the Emergency Response and Crisis Management Plan is the overall guide that they use to be able to manage this plan. And so to be able to do all this, we put this in effect with our local partners, which is the Sheriff's Department. We work with
Health Department.
We work with Lake County Emergency Operations Center and LifeStream.
LifeStream, yep.
Yes, so it's kind of it's a coordinated effort. It's very collaborative in what we've been doing. And so we've done a lot up to that point. And what we did just as we were getting ready to go for the Christmas break, we make sure we enforced a single point of entry and some other things. And John, you probably can go into.
And actually, the other tidbit to this is we also did a parent resource guide. And Mr. Young was very instrumental in having that go out to each parent. It's in English and in Spanish, and it gives wonderful references for parents in the event that they need to contact law enforcement or some other service provider that can help them. Getting back to the single point of entry, we made sure that we had law enforcement on each campus the week before Christmas break, and then also when students returned to school through the first week. And we wanted to make sure that there was an overall feeling of safety and security on our campuses. And I think we achieved that.
Yes, yeah. And actually, I remember I actually thanked one of the officers when I was there, just because it did make you feel as a parent a little bit better, just, you know.
And we, all district administrators were out on school campuses to make sure that there was adequate support and safety measures in place.
Well, and I think that the Go kits seem interesting to me, because I'm guessing that, and I might be wrong because I don't know, but you know, our teachers and administrators have got some training in what you do in a situation. But when something happens, and I've been in a situation where something happens that's unexpected, a lot of times those thoughts just go right out of your mind. So having something that is going to remind you of things that you might want to do at that point, or that you need to do, is probably extremely helpful.
And that was exactly what our thinking was at the time. It's a color-coded document is so that it gives a person a quick reference. But then it's also a quick reference guide in the fact that the protocols are condensed, and it's so that the person can look at it and see it immediately, exactly what you're talking about, and know what their response should be.
Well, because how can you possibly, how can you possibly know how to respond to every single situation, or remember every single situation?
And the important thing along with the kits is to actually take some time to look those things over, do a little bit of reminders with teachers, students, of folks, all those stakeholders about what do we do if something happens. And so taking the time to practice a little bit is important. And
do you have practice drills with the students? I'm guessing that it's kind of, I know there's fire drills, I remember those kind of things, but I guess it's important to practice with them, but you also don't want to scare them, make them think about all of these things too. How do you balance that?
Well, certainly failing to prepare is preparing to fail. So we have to do some, and I think in education we know you have to practice things to get it right. That's the whole point of what we do every day in the classroom. So if we're going to do it for academics, I think we need to do it for safety as well. Sure. You have to teach them what's the right way to do it, so that when the event happens, it's a little more second nature.
Right. So what kind of problems do schools encounter when they're implementing school safety?
Well, I think from the district standpoint, what I kind of see is we want to make sure schools are secure, but we want to strike a balance between having them secure and still where they're inviting to parents and the community and students. And so it's just basically avoiding looking more like a prison. We want it to be a school setting, but still have security measures in place.
Do you anticipate that at some point we're going to have metal detectors at the schools and things like that?
At this point, I don't see that, but the board is reviewing several security initiatives, and so we'll just be waiting to take our direction from the board when it comes to those kinds of issues.
But I can relate with that, because you don't want to send your kid off to somewhere where it feels like you're sending them to a prison either. Correct. So that's got to be a little bit of a challenge. What signs do you think, what could be some signs that would indicate a child might become violent?
Sometimes we look for signs of social withdrawal, poor academic performance in the classroom. Sometimes there's a history of discipline problems. I think that student-teacher relationship is most important, because in the classroom the instructor really knows those students, and like your children,
right?
Okay, and when there's something wrong, whether or not they say it or not. You can still feel the vibe, so to speak. So our teachers are, I think they're very intuitive, and they work very hard at developing those relationships with students to detect if there are issues of potential violence, and then we notify the appropriate school personnel, guidance counselors, administrators. Everybody comes together as a team.
And then so what would happen to a child that maybe shows these violent tendencies?
Well, we always want to have an open line of communication. We want to be able to talk with the child, include the parent. We want to be as transparent as possible. We're we're 5,000 serving 41,000 students, and we really have to work hard to make those students feel as though they're always engaged and always valued. So we take a lot of time to get to know our students in the district.
Well, and I'm wondering, you know, I know that I've heard say before, a lot of times it's not necessarily the kids who are the ones that are always picked on or the ones that are this, but sometimes it's that kid that nobody even notices is the one that's the most likely to become violent or have issues because they're really just kind of forgotten. I mean, do you have special training for teachers to really try to engage those type of students and in help for kids if you see them seeming to spiral that way, or even just, you know, it could be even in a depression manner or something like that? Is there special
You know, our
services?
Student Services Department has trained school psychologists and school social workers to understand the signs and the warning signs of violence and abuse in students. We have the multitude of our teachers trained in crisis prevention.
And it's not always the adults who are the ones who let us know when there's a problem.
Oh, yeah.
If we built those relationships with our students, they'll come let us know, and then of course we will put those students with the appropriate other personnel, student services personnel, who can help us determine what we need to do next step.
So what should a student do if they maybe suspect, you know, in high school, middle school, or something, that maybe a kid in their class is going to be violent or is going to do something like that? What should the student do?
I always encourage the students, if they're ever worried or concerned, come tell the nearest adult if it's immediate, or come tell student services personnel or an administrator, and let us take a look further into it. And we try to ease their mind that we are going to look into anything that they bring to us. And social media has opened up a whole new avenue for us, and in particular students, to help bring to us what we need to know to maybe look into the situation.
And there's one other point that I want to drive home. We are very closely working with Crime Line and the Speak Out Network. That number is 1-800-423-TIPS. You can text, you can call. There's a variety of different ways that we can get the message out there. And those tips are anonymous. We need to know if there's an issue so that we can address that issue. And our vehicle, even on the backside of our code of conduct, has all the information for Crime Line. It's posted throughout the schools and is part of our Speak Out network.
If something were to happen with a kid outside of school, where they're not necessarily doing something in school, but they have an issue with the police, that they're maybe they've done something violent with the police outside of school, does the school get notified? Do they know about this child's behavior, that something might have happened?
Yes, through our department, the Safe Schools Department, we work with the Department of Juvenile Justice, and we are given information through our court liaison for students who have committed what we call off-campus felonies. And we have to determine whether or not the nature of that felony, if it would create an adverse impact on the school campus. So I, as the coordinator of Safe Schools, I'm in contact with the principals and with all the Safe School coordinators, and we have a seamless transition of information delivery, I guess you could say. All of the principals know that it's a very wide open lane of communication to the Safe Schools Department, and we talk regularly about all students.
Can someone be expelled from school or suspended from school for something that they do outside of school time?
You know, what we do is what we call an administrative placement rather than an alternative placement, because when the student is in the juvenile justice pipeline, so to speak, and they're awaiting adjudication, we still continue educational opportunities for those students. It might not be on the school campus, but it might be in one of our alternate educational sites, and then we contract with a couple of charter schools like Ali Academy, and then we also run our alternative educational development program that runs concurrently at East Ridge High School during the school year.
So now, what are some of the other issues when it comes to safety that you may have to deal with? I know not everything is necessarily a physical threat. I know we've talked in the past on this show about bullying and things like that. Tell a little bit about those kind of school safety issues and what you're trying to deal with and how you're trying to prevent some of those things.
Well, we certainly, again, try to keep those lines of communication open with students. We encourage students who feel that they're not being treated well, relational type bullying, to report that. We have anonymous ways to do that. We also have the direct way of just coming and letting us know. And when that comes to us, we have a set procedure to follow to determine whether the incident has risen to that level.
You know, the other thing that someone can do can go to lake.k12.fl.us and go to our department, and there's anonymous bully forms, and every school has got a bully box, and they can pick up a form at the front office or in the guidance department, and they can report anonymously. They can do a face-to-face reporting. We're really set up well for having students report incidents of bullying, and then we always, within 2 days, conduct an investigation. We notify the parent within 2 days, and then we have 10 days to complete the entire bullying investigation.
Well, I think it's important to realize that, like when I was going to school, bully really was a little different than it is now. I mean, in some ways it was the same, but you always kind of seem to identify, oh, he's the one that's going to steal your lunch money and he's going to be this. But really now with online, you know, with
cyberbullying,
all of those kind of things, it can really be serious. And I know friends who've had kids that it's affected them in a huge way in their personal life because of people, you know, whether it be teasing or some type of a thing. And I think that it can be a helpless feeling for parents to have that. So knowing some of these, what they need to do if they feel like their kid
our
is
Speak Out Network, 1-800-423-TIPS. Going to the Safe Schools website. There's a variety of ways. You can call the Safe Schools Department at 253-6675. We want to know.
And just a key thing off of this, parent involvement is a huge thing that can help us with these kinds of issues. And so, you know, just want to make sure we make that point.
And what do you mean by parent involvement?
Well, you know, knowing and understanding what your child carries to school, check that backpack, you know, those kinds of things, and just stay connected with the school environment. And Rob?
I think monitoring their time on social media, taking a look at what they're doing with their phones and texting and their video capabilities is important as far as the parent piece goes.
Right. Well, and I'm going to say, I was very impressed. I had a friend that had a situation with one of her children, and they, you know, the school took it extremely serious and you know, took care of the situation immediately, and there was actions taken. And it was really impressive to me because I think as a parent, you have a fear of, you know, what are they going to do? Is kids name calling, or it's this happening? So knowing that there is, you know, that you all do not play around in these areas, and that it is serious, and you will be taken serious, I think that can really be something that's a deterrent for people, or help parents know that it's okay to say something you do want to know. Is there anything else, I mean, that you can think of in the area of, you know, of what we're doing? Do you anticipate a lot of changes in school safety? You know, is there anything else that you can think of that people really need to know?
You know, we're always, we work with a lot of federal mandates, and we want to increase our school safety. We have an ongoing initiative to keeping all of our schools safe. I think the most important thing for parents to know is that really school is the safest place for your child to be in each day. We want children to come to school each day, put forth their best effort, and feel safe and secure.
Right.
Yeah, we spend a lot of time training, developing plans, giving our faculty opportunities for incident command system training, those kinds of things, vulnerability assessment training. We recently conducted some up in the Claremont area for Claremont Elementary and Cypress Ridge Elementary. Being able to just kind of check our schools to make sure that we take care of anything that will make them vulnerable.
Right.
And so, so we do a lot of things to be able to kind of continue to do that. And so when you look at school safety, it takes a lot. It's a coordinated effort. It's an effort that goes extremely extensive when you look at partnerships and those kinds of things. And so we'll continue to do just those kinds of things to keep our schools safe.
But we need parents to work with us. If they know something, they need to let us know, just as soon as possible. Don't you agree,
That
Rod?
collaboration piece is the most important, whether it be parents, students, community members, and we certainly enjoy our collaboration partnerships with Lake County Sheriff's Office and the other municipalities. But we don't need to stop there. We need to have everybody involved.
Right.
Everybody who's involved. How the community takes this is how the schools are going to be. If you want the schools to be super safe, then everybody's got to be involved.
Absolutely. Well, thank you very much for your time and
You're welcome.
and for sharing with everyone. I'm sure that this has put a lot of people at ease. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.